Many of you have heard the saying, whole foods first, when it comes to your diet, and the famous Hippocrates quote, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. Of course, we know that food is necessary to fuel our daily activities, and the composition of what we eat may affect our body composition and performance. However, is there a point where food may not be enough to work to our optimal level and peak capacity? Is there a need to add supplements into our diet on top of what we eat? You also know from the micronutrients lecture that many people end up with minor deficiencies in one nutrient or another. But you may be wondering, what about all of the other supplements you hear about? It's no secret that many people are looking to gain an extra edge for fat loss, body transformation, energy levels, and performance. These supplements, or ergogenic aids as they're often categorized as, are termed sport and performance nutrition, or sports supplements, because many athletes are looking for an edge too. But so are other people. These supplements come in many shapes and sizes, from pills to powders to gels, and the general public eats them up. It's quite surprising to see how much money is spent on supplements each year. A study by Persistence Market Research released a report recently that stated that the global sports nutrition market, which includes sports foods and drinks and supplements, was valued at $20.7 billion. Yes, billion. And it's projected to reach a whopping $37.7 billion by the year 2019. With the overwhelming amount of advice and testimonials about consuming supplements, it's difficult to determine which of these products work, which are a waste of your money, and which products could be harmful. It seems that almost weekly there's a story in the news about a contaminated supplement that creates the image that supplements are completely unregulated. Well, this is not true, and like many news stories, often one bad scenario paints the entire industry with the same brush. Admittedly, it can be quite confusing, and even the most experienced consumer has doubts. It's confusing even for people like me who studies these supplements on a regular basis to know just what to choose. How do you know that the doctor pushing this new miracle product isn't being paid by the company to promote it? The field of performance nutrition is extremely dynamic. There's new research coming out almost daily that can change the general consensus on any single topic. While there are many performance supplements that show no real benefit, other supplements could actually be quite useful for health, body composition, and performance. In fact, some performance supplements have shown safety and efficacy for a long time and have now made their way into the clinical world to alleviate and prevent diseases. I'll discuss it all with you in this lecture. A lot of money is being pumped into this niche market, and the purpose of this lecture is to distinguish the performance supplements that actually work based on reliable and consistent research versus those that only lighten your wallet. Let's begin by discussing what dietary supplements are and how to read their labels, known as the Supplement Facts Panel. Well, a dietary supplement has a very long definition. Technically, they are defined as a product that's intended to supplement the diet and contains one or more of the following ingredients: a vitamin, mineral, herb, or other botanical, an amino acid that is a concentrate, metabolite, constituent, extract, or a combination of any of these. Notice how these products are not intended to replace food that is already in your diet. You know how to read a conventional food label with the Nutrition Facts Panel, but there are some differences between this label and the Supplement Facts Panel that we should highlight before we dive into the specifics. You'll often see a section with a proprietary blend listed. This means that rather than giving specific amounts of specific ingredients, they are bunched together under proprietary blend, and only one single amount of all the ingredients in the blend is listed. This is a list of ingredients that are part of a product formula specific to a particular manufacturer. It's their secret ingredient. Now, the Food and Drug Administration does not require the amount of the ingredients in the proprietary blend formula to be listed, which is where consumers tend to run into trouble with supplements. It's very important to check the labels on any supplements to make sure you know what you're taking. If you see proprietary blend, you just don't know how much of each ingredient is in your product. You don't have to avoid these products that have a proprietary blend. Just be sure to work with a sports nutritionist and your physician to see what will work best for you. If you do see the dose listed, which many quality companies include on their labels already, it's best to be sure that it matches what the research evidence shows actually works for humans. I'll discuss specific examples in just a few minutes. But now that we've covered how to interpret the supplement facts panel, let's talk about supplements for fat loss, muscle gain, and even those that are used for disease prevention. Keep in mind that the choice to take any of these should be thought out and be extremely careful in terms of balancing them with the other healthy lifestyle choices you make. As always, it's a good idea to check with your health professional before adding a supplement to your diet. Let's start with fat loss supplements. It seems like nowadays everyone wants to burn fat the easy way. Every time I open up a fitness magazine, there's an advertisement for a new metabolic booster or some products that are even making their way back to the shelves after being banned in the past for having things like ephedrine, a chemical linked to one death and a slew of serious health problems. The question is, do any fat-burning supplements actually work, and are they safe? And the answer is actually yes. Some do work and some are safe. Most of these supplements target fat loss in one of three ways. By increasing the fat you burn for energy, by blocking fat storage in your body, or by controlling your calorie intake by suppressing hunger. However, of all of the marketed products, only a few have good research-based evidence. The most common supplement in the fat-burning category is probably something you've already had today. It's caffeine. In fact, caffeine is the most popular consumed drug in the world and is also found in many products like coffee, tea, soda, and even chocolate. Caffeine is thought to be a weight loss supplement because it increases resting energy expenditure by 7 to 15% in some studies. The active compound in caffeine is called methylxanthine, and it acts on the heart muscle and skeletal muscle and central nervous system as a stimulant. This is why you may get the jitters when you've had that extra cup of joe in the morning. Now, some people need to be careful because the extra stimulation from caffeine can be too much. But this only needs to really be taken as a precaution if you have a pre-existing heart condition or are just extremely sensitive to caffeine. Again, always check with your doctor regarding your own individual health status. So, what is the right balance? Most of the studies show that in order to have a noticeable metabolic increase, that roughly 3 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body mass must be consumed at one time. So for example, if you are a 155-pound or 70-kilogram person, you would take in 210 to 420 milligrams of caffeine. This equates to about 1 to 2 normal-sized servings, like 16 to 20 ounces, of coffee, depending on the strength of the brew. However, if you don't like drinking that much liquid, there are caffeine tablets available on the market that are pretty cheap and contain about 200 milligrams per pill. Just keep in mind that an excess of pretty much anything you put into your body will likely cause problems and could even be deadly. You can probably see how this might lead to cost and/or efficiency issues with caffeine. I would recommend for fat loss to start with many of the other nutrition and exercise factors I'm discussing with you in this course. Then, If you truly want to try caffeine for fat loss purposes, it could be useful if done properly. So, when should you take caffeine? Well, it's best to take 30 to 45 minutes before exercising and/or first thing in the morning before breakfast. For best results, caffeine should be taken on an empty stomach because consuming it with food, especially carbohydrates, diminishes its effects by lowering plasma caffeine concentrations, as well as delaying the time to the peak caffeine concentration in your blood. So yes, drinking your coffee with little or no additives like cream, sugar, or milk will be most helpful, not to mention lowering your overall calorie intake. So how does caffeine promote fat loss? Well, out of a number of potential mechanisms for how caffeine works to promote fat loss, there are two that are thought to work most readily in humans. The first is the inhibition of an enzyme known as phosphodiesterase, or PDE. Now, in a normal scenario, PDE essentially puts the brakes on fat loss. Caffeine is thought to stop PDE, or stop the brakes, which allows fatty acids to be released from fat tissue. Then more energy can be burned from fat for weight loss. The second mechanism involves the inhibition of a molecule called adenosine. Normally, adenosine will slow or stop the neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. Norepinephrine assists in releasing fat from fat cells and increases energy expenditure to promote weight loss. So by taking caffeine, you inhibit adenosine's actions, and norepinephrine can do its work on fat loss. Now, just because caffeine may increase your ability to get fat out of your fat cells and into your blood, a process called lipolysis, does not mean that you can lose fat and not have to exercise. In order to burn or use the fat that is now in your blood, you have to exercise too. Otherwise, you have a good chance of just circulating that fat around your body and then restoring it or re-esterifying it as fat. The downside to caffeine is that the effect of caffeine on weight loss is not the same for everyone. It seems that it works best for younger people and for those who are more physically fit. Seems unfair, right? Also, if you consume lots of caffeine, it is thought that you become less sensitive to its effects on fat loss and performance. Yes, caffeine has been shown to improve exercise performance. However, habitual intake does not affect caffeine concentrations in the blood, and people with more fat mass tend to have higher plasma caffeine concentrations than lean individuals. This just means that caffeine stays at an elevated concentration, but it's possible that this could lead to some desensitization, where it just takes more and more caffeine to have the same response. A common concept that people have with caffeine is that it will cause dehydration. However, numerous studies have shown that this is a myth and that there is no evidence to support it. Well, why then does it make me urinate more is the common question I get. The answer is probably because you are drinking quite a bit more liquid to get your caffeine intake. More liquid equals more urination. Another supplement with potential fat loss effects is green tea. This drink has become increasingly popular in American culture over the past decade, with all sorts of products now including green tea or green tea extracts. It has been used in Eastern cultures for much longer to increase mental awareness, improve digestion, and regulate body temperature, in addition to acting as an antioxidant and for its anti-obesity and anti-cancer effects. The active ingredient in green tea is called epigallocatechin gallate, and it's commonly called EGCG. Essentially, EGCG is thought to block an enzyme called catechol-O-methyltransferase, or COMT, that prevents norepinephrine from being degraded and prolongs norepinephrine's thermic action in your body. Remember that norepinephrine's thermogenic effect consists of helping to release fat from fat cells and to increase energy expenditure. In some studies, EGCG has been shown to increase energy expenditure by about 4% and increase fat burning by roughly 10% compared to a placebo. Interestingly, when combined with caffeine, which also preserves norepinephrine's thermogenic action, there seems to be a synergistic effect between caffeine and EGCG, which is in some studies has been shown to ramp up fat burning more than caffeine or EGCG alone. But I wouldn't run off to the supermarket and start buying everything with green tea just yet. In order to have a beneficial effect, the research shows that you need to consume about 750 milligrams per day of EGCG. And this is a huge dose. 1 cup of green tea only has about 50 milligrams of EGCG, which means you would need to drink about 15 cups of green tea per day. But you don't have to turn green drinking all of your EGCG. Many EGCG supplements are found in capsulated form with about 400 milligrams per pill. So taking 2 per day would achieve the required amount shown to be effective in research studies. I'll remind you again to check with your doctor about all of this to make sure that your choices are healthy ones. Many teas and supplements contain both EGCG and caffeine. But even drinking decaffeinated green tea may improve body composition. A recent study found that consuming a decaffeinated green tea extract of 571 milligrams of EGCG per day for 4 weeks resulted in almost a 2% decrease in body fat and a large 25% increase in fat oxidation during moderate intensity exercise. Interestingly, the decaf green tea also improved exercise performance in these young men. While caffeine and EGCG in tea are 2 of the main fat loss supplements on the market, let's take a look at some others that are easily accessible and have some evidence to back them up. Capsaicin is a spice that causes the perceived hotness that you feel when eating spicy foods. This pungent extract has been shown to increase thermogenesis and energy expenditure by enhancing, you guessed it, norepinephrine release. The issue with this is that many of these studies have used rats and not humans as research subjects. So you have to be cautious about generalizing these results to humans. The data for humans is less impressive, but body fat reductions have been reported. The issue is that there's a high rate of weight regain, and the participants had trouble sticking to the dosage that is thought to be required for a beneficial effect. Another debatable supplement for fat loss is called carnitine. Carnitine is a fat carrier or gatekeeper that helps transfer fat into the mitochondria where it gets oxidized for fuel. And logically, it makes sense that if you increase the amount of carnitine, then you could get more fat into the right place to burn it for energy. Well, unfortunately, that is not the case in 99% of research on this topic. Until more long-term studies are completed, it doesn't appear to be worth it. Numerous other supplements exist, like conjugated linoleic acid, or CLA, chitosan, and yohimbine, and others. However, in research trials with humans, there is not enough evidence, in my opinion, to show any fat loss effect from these supplements that is consistent. So for fat loss supplements, only a few have real evidence to support their use. Time and time again, the beneficial effect from these supplements comes when combined with exercise training. Even for the products that have demonstrated ability to increase thermogenesis and overall calorie burn, it is usually quite small. This just means that if you bank on a supplement to help you lose weight or lose fat without considering your overall nutrition and exercise habits, you're in for a long, expensive, and unsuccessful battle with body composition. In fact, many people feel that when they take a fat loss supplement, they can loosen up their good eating patterns because the pill will do the work for them. This couldn't be any further from the truth. In fact, we published research on an ineffective weight loss pill that contained caffeine, green tea, CLA, and some amino acids. It turns out that after 8 weeks of taking the pill, but not exercising, resulted in no changes in body composition at all. Now that we've talked about weight loss supplements, let's talk about some supplements that are thought to increase your muscle mass. The biggest player here is creatine, or creatine monohydrate. Creatine is one of the most popular supplements ever produced, and the most thoroughly researched of any supplement. We've produced creatine naturally in the liver and the kidneys. It is stored either as free creatine or bound to a phosphate molecule in skeletal muscle. Naturally, the creatine phosphate energy system is used to provide energy for maximal intensity, short duration exercise. And creatine supplies a phosphate to adenosine diphosphate to create adenosine triphosphate, the energy we need to do everything. As a supplement, creatine is often used to build muscle, improve strength and power, and increase anaerobic or short duration exercise. Things like powerlifting and sprinting. The standard serving of creatine is 5 grams, which is equal to the amount of creatine of about 2.5 pounds of raw meat. So needless to say, it's a lot easier to take one tiny scoop of creatine versus eating an entire plate of steak. There are several forms of creatine on the market, but the one that has the most research support and effectiveness is creatine monohydrate. Several hundred peer-reviewed research studies have evaluated this form, and more than 70% of those studies show a significant improvement in exercise capacity and increases in muscle mass. So let's take a look at some of the research that has been done with creatine to build muscle mass. Well, in my lab, we had 29 healthy, resistance-trained young men consume 21 grams of a multi-ingredient performance supplement, which contained creatine, for 6 weeks. During this time, they also lifted weights 3 times per week. And the results of this study showed a significant 4.7% increase in muscle mass and a 1.6% average decrease in total fat mass. The good news is that creatine seems to work in both younger and in older people. In fact, men and women over age 65 who took 5 grams of creatine monohydrate per day for 2 weeks and lifted weights 3 times per week had a significant increase in muscle mass and overall strength. There was an average increase of almost 4 pounds or 1.8 kilograms of muscle mass in the creatine group compared to less than 1 pound or 0.5 kilogram increase in the placebo group. Creatine has even been shown to be studied in children. One study had 16 young teenage male swimmers compete in 2 all-out 100% effort 100-meter swims. After supplementation with 20 grams per day of creatine monohydrate for 5 days, there was a 2-second improvement in time to complete the 2 sprints. Almost no time change was reported in the placebo group. How does creatine help? Most experts attribute the beneficial changes to body composition and performance from creatine to the improved ability to do more quality work during exercise. But research also shows some improvement to actual cellular processes for muscle gain too. And due to the repeatable success of creatine use for improving both body composition and performance, creatine is now being studied and used with great interest for clinical populations and in disease prevention. Creatine has now been shown to improve muscle mass and outcomes in people with muscular dystrophy, leukemia, traumatic brain injury, and infants born with errors of normal metabolic function. It is amazing how this traditional sports supplement is now being used for neuromuscular and neurological conditions. Creatine doses that are similar to what we've discussed have been documented to enter your central nervous system and influence brain concentrations of creatine phosphate after both 7 and 28 days of supplementation. Because creatine enters your brain, it has some evidence to support positive effects in cases of traumatic brain injury, and even some evidence for stroke patients to improve brain function. In addition, patients with muscular dystrophy are now shown to benefit from creatine supplementation, improve nerve function, muscle mass, muscle strength, and power. Even in traditional cases of sarcopenia, or the age-related loss in muscle mass, including creatine and resistance training is shown to increase muscle mass and decrease fat mass. Now, a common myth is that creatine is a steroid and will damage your kidneys. Creatine is not a steroid. It is simply the combination of 3 amino acids. The research shows that creatine is safe and effective among young and old, male and female, and healthy and diseased populations. In the absence of any pre-existing conditions like kidney disease, creatine is a supplement that has been consistently shown to be beneficial. The most common side effect reported with creatine is weight gain. However, this is probably the type that you want because creatine increases muscle mass. Remember, it is more about body composition than body weight. Also, note that some cases of gastrointestinal upset have been noted in the literature. And the most common dose is 5 grams per day, about 1 tablespoon. Research shows that creatine builds and preserves muscle mass, so it may be an ideal supplement across the lifespan stages, and not just for young people trying to put on muscle. And because so many people lose muscle as they age, it might also be a good idea to use creatine to try and prevent some of the muscle loss. It is something that I recommend to my parents and my family. Another supplement that may help with muscle mass and performance is called beta-alanine. It has been shown to improve performance and exercise capacity, as well as to permit greater intensity and volume of exercise training. Sounds pretty good, right? So how does it work? Essentially, beta-alanine, which is an amino acid made in the liver, combines with another amino acid called histidine to form a new protein molecule called carnosine in the muscle. Carnosine then acts to buffer or soak up the acidity or hydrogen ions that are created during very difficult exercise. When accumulated, hydrogen ions cause muscle pain and fatigue. So if the hydrogen ions are controlled, theoretically you could exercise longer and at a higher intensity. You see how once again, higher intensity exercise for longer should help to improve body composition. For example, one study had men take 3.2 grams per day of beta-alanine with 10.5 grams per day of creatine, or 10.5 grams per day of creatine only, or 10.5 grams per day of dextrose, a sugar placebo, for 10 weeks during a resistance training program. It was found that the beta-alanine plus creatine group had the greatest improvement in muscle mass and the largest decrease in fat mass over the course of the study. And other research has tested 4 grams of beta-alanine per day compared to a placebo for 8 weeks during a high-intensity interval sprinting and resistance training program in young men. The results showed that despite both groups losing weight, the composition of the weight was different. On average, the group taking beta-alanine gained more muscle mass. Other studies are beginning to pile up too, many that support the use of beta-alanine to increase performance and improve body composition in both men and women. So how much do you need to be effective? About 3 to 6 grams per day for 4 weeks can increase intramuscular carnosine and improve performance. Typically, this dose should be split up throughout the day for best results. For example, taking 1.5 grams 3 times per day. One side effect to note is that beta-alanine is often associated with a tingling feeling or a numbness in your extremities that's called paresthesia. This sometimes is temporary but annoying. And not all people have this feeling, but it's reported in many of the research studies. As a result, some companies have made extended release capsules to allow for slow release of beta-alanine. This slow release can help reduce or diminish any of the paresthesia effects. My lab has completed 2 small pilot studies with the use of beta-alanine in both Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis patients to see if it improved their physical function. Those data are still being analyzed, but in a short 4-week study, performance was not improved any more than a placebo. So once again, while there's crossover from sports science to diseased populations, much more work will be needed just to see what products will work for each condition. It's a very exciting time to be in this field for sure. With all that said, it seems that beta-alanine improves performance by being converted to carnosine. But more work is underway to pinpoint exactly how beta-alanine improves performance. Now, other great muscle building or muscle maintenance supplements exist, including amino acids like leucine and whole proteins that we discussed earlier. Another supplement called HMB, that stands for beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate, also shows some promise to help build muscle strength, and particularly in non-athletes. But more research is needed. Some supplements like caffeine, EGCG, creatine, and beta-alanine have been studied repeatedly over the years in many different populations. They have been shown to be effective in many different types of exercise modalities too. What is really cool is that these traditional sports performance supplements are crossing over into the clinical world and being used to assist with improving or preventing chronic disease. The most prevalent examples to date include creatine for neurological disorders to improve nerve function and muscle strength. In an ideal world, I could put things simply and say, these supplements I've discussed will work for you. But this area, along with the entire field of sports nutrition, is not so clear-cut. There are a lot of gray areas. With supplementation, individual factors such as training, status, sex, age, and performance goals all play a large role in the efficacy of these products. So my recommendation is that you focus first on high-quality nutrition and exercise quality as the whole best strategy for improving your lifestyle and attaining your initial goals. Remember, most of you take supplements already. They are in most of the common packaged foods that you eat or beverages that you drink. But sports supplements are a bit different, and it is important to understand that the supplements are intended to be added to a nutritious diet and not to replace the foods that we eat. So try this. Try adding 5 grams per day of creatine monohydrate to your daily routine and see how you feel.